Evening. I call to order this workshop of the Carrabelle City Commission. It's Thursday, February the 18th, 2021 at 6 p.m. and we're in the Carrabelle City Hall chambers. And I will, well, since we're having a workshop, I will not ask Commissioner Allen to say the prayer. Workshop and pledge are not required, or excuse me, the prayer. Okay, the prayer and pledge are not required at workshops. But, okay, excuse me. Okay, for the roll call, we have Commissioner Frank Mathis, Commissioner Cal Allen, myself, Mayor La Paz, Commissioner Tony Millender, and Commissioner Mary Mel Kelly. And so with that, we'll move right on into the only item for discussion during this workshop regarding mandatory garbage service. And this being a workshop, I'll remind you that no action will be taken during this meeting. And as I do many times during workshops to help those who are just coming into the discussion understand the background, I will give a history on how we got to where we are today. And then following that, the city attorney will explain the Florida statutes requirements that will allow for adoption of a mandatory garbage service ordinance. And then we'll take public comment. And then finally, the commissioners will have an opportunity to discuss and consider the public comments. So back about a year ago, during the process of the county recycling locations being shut down early last year, numerous comments appeared on Facebook in support of the need for mandatory garbage service. And that was because there was so much household garbage being dumped at the recycling locations. And that's basically what caused the recycling to be shut down. And in view of those positive comments for mandatory garbage, I requested an agenda item for the commission to consider this option. So at the January 9th, 2020 commission meeting, the commission approved to conduct further research, which included inviting commercial hauling companies, Waste One and Waste Pro, to present at the February 6th commission meeting. At the February 6, 2020 meeting, after hearing comments from the representative of the two commercial haulers in Carrabelle, a motion was approved for the attorney to develop a request for proposal specifications package to use for advertising for mandatory garbage service providers within the city limits of Carrabelle. At the March 5th, 2020 meeting, the city attorney reported on his progress regarding the development of the request for proposal specification packet. And at this point, we were beginning to learn that a specification packet of this type would be extremely detailed. So on the May 7th, 2020 meeting, the city attorney followed up again with his development of progress on the specifications packet. Where we learned that it would require significant research to compare specifications required and used by other Florida cities and county, and to learn about state guidelines and requirements that governed mandatory garbage service. We continued on for several months then after that with no discussion while the attorney was working on the development of the specifications package. And then on October 1st, 2020, at our commission meeting, this board had an agenda item titled Discussion and Possible Action regarding directing the city attorney to present a draft ordinance on mandatory garbage service for city residents. During that discussion, the city attorney reported on the detailed process and the Florida statutes requirements for adoption of a mandatory garbage service ordinance. And so I'll turn that over to the discussion now over to the city attorney so he can explain to us that this is not something that can happen overnight and what's involved.
Okay, so during this process, we learned, or I learned, and I conveyed that to the city commission, that our situation here in the city is that we've basically allowed 3 private companies to operate in a non-exclusive fashion. And what we talked about doing for a number of reasons, but one of the things we discussed was preparing an RFP to allow basically one company to have the exclusive right to serve the solid waste needs of the city of Carrabelle. And during that discussion, in educating myself on the applicable Florida statutes, there is a it's an interesting statute, and it's 403.70605. And what that talks about, and it was just very good, I guess, legislative work by the solid waste lobby. And what it stands for, this proposition, that if a city is going to displace any private companies from performing waste management services in the city, and they don't provide the requisite notice to them so that, and this is me talking, that they would be able to basically unwind their business in the city over a period of time, and the city instead sends out an RFP and moves ahead with displacing them, that the city could be responsible to pay them up to 18 months of their revenue, just as call it a penalty fee. So what we talked about doing was really two things. One, and as the mayor had mentioned, the city needs to determine whether or not we want to move to mandatory garbage pickup, basically away from the voluntary now, with 3 people operating the city. And what we have kind of some basically different things available to us, but we can pursue what I would call 2 parallel tracks here, which would be, we can provide the notice that's required by letter to the existing service providers, putting them on notice that as of a date certain in the future, which would be, and I apologize, I gotta look at the statute again, it's pretty complicated. As I think about, it's years out, meaning it would be 2 to 3 years out into the future, that at that date certain, we are going to offer, we're gonna put out an RFP for exclusive service, which to one provider. But we literally need to give that kind of notice to the existing providers. In the meantime, if we pass a mandatory garbage ordinance, it's my recommendation that if we do so, that we then, we say, look, garbage pickup is mandatory, you pick your provider to the different residents, and here's a list of them that are the current providers. So we don't displace anybody, we just if we make it mandatory, then basically the existing providers will compete with each other on price and that sort of thing, independent of the city, that we will not mandate that. And just to make it clear, that we would at the same time send out this letter to all of them saying that at a point in the future, and I'll make sure it complies with the statute, we're gonna go to a sole provider, and we will then have some control over the rates, right? Then we can dictate under this franchise, I say dictate, but they will come and bid on it, and one of our bid requirements could be that you provide it at this price. And hopefully someone can meet those bid specs. But so what I've recommended is we do it in kind of a 2-part fashion. But obviously the first question, and it was the most controversial for as long as I've been involved with the city, is do we want mandatory garbage pickup or not? And then we move into these more particular of how does that, how will that work? So hit me with a question.
Yes, and that's how it came about. You explained this to us in detail back in October. And then at that point, we felt that, the board felt that if there was no will for mandatory garbage service overwhelmingly from the public, then it would be no point in paying, with all due respect, continue to pay more attorney fees for development of a draft ordinance if, in fact, that we were not going to move forward with it. So we made the decision, the board made the decision and voted unanimously to hold this workshop today after the holidays, and we advertised it as best we could without having to expend a lot of money on it through Facebook and sending out email blasts and putting it on Oyster Radio, so that we could have citizenry input here today. I'm personally a little disappointed that we don't have more citizens here, because we really do want to hear from the citizens on what they think about this. Hopefully the rain, maybe people are watching it on Facebook and they can make their comments there. They'll call us and talk to us about it. So,
Mayor,
yes.
excuse me, could you also include in your discussion about the county considering mandatory garbage pickup, and you kind of waited to see what would happen with them too, and then obviously nothing
Well,
happened?
I mean, we have watched what the county is doing off and on, but I mean, that really wasn't a major point of our decision, but, it would have been, at one point, we did talk about it would be easier on all of us if we all worked together and it was simultaneous, but we had so many positive comments whenever our recycling was shut down because of illegal dumping at the recycling locations, and that so many people had suggested that if we had mandatory garbage, we would not have all of this illegal dumping that we have going on. And I will try to keep my comments too within the city limits, and that's why we discussed it. And all of the time that we discussed it and reviewed it last year, personally, I had no negative comments towards it. They were all positive comments. So I do want to note that in our city's comprehensive plan, under the public facilities element, that includes number 2G2, policy 151, and it says that the city shall adopt an ordinance in its land development regulations that requires all property owners to participate in the city's mandatory garbage collection program. Well, the city doesn't have a mandatory garbage collection program, and so we can't develop an ordinance for the land development regulations because we don't have a mandatory collection program. And so we're at the very starting point on this, and we're just trying to see if there's a will for it throughout the city. And we can, do the commissioners have any comment at this time? Because if not, we'll go ahead and take public comment. Okay, all right, so we'll take public comment at this time. And I wish that you would come up, don't be afraid, take your mask off and just state your name and let us know what you think. We're here for you and to hear you.
And Courtney, I don't have a microphone, so you'll have to.
At least let us know if you're for it.
I have a Facebook comment.
Okay.
So a Facebook comment from Dusty Melander. No mandatory trash pickup. Too much government. Got Martha Murray. I wholeheartedly support getting the service mandated. Also, I sent you guys 2 emails this week that we've got one from Gathana Parmenas, and the other was from a Chris Jones, both in support of the garbage pickup.
Did you all read Ms. Gathana? I didn't get Mr. Chris Jones, but I do have Ms. Gathana's here. She's in support of it.
I didn't get Chris Jones's either, but
Yeah, that was the one we talked about. It says Chief Jones.
Oh, thank you. Okay.
Chief Jones, maybe I saw that somewhere. I would comment to Mr. Dusty Melander that I wholeheartedly agree with too much government. I definitely agree with that. I'm not one to have a lot of government oversight. I believe in people's property rights. In fact, my husband and I do not have garbage service. We recycle most everything we can recycle. We compost all of our compostable vegetables, vegetable matter, any meat that we eat meat, but not a lot. Any scraps or grease that's left over, we freeze that in packaging in our freezer, and then we go to the landfill about every 6 weeks, take our recycling there. They have a recycling location there. Take our regular household garbage with our frozen meat scraps. And that's what we do, and it costs somewhere between $3 and $5. So, but mandatory garbage, it's unfortunate that the bad actions of a few require mandatory garbage. You know, it's extremely unfortunate. And, but a lot of folks, I'd say a good many, 2/3 of the people or more in Carrabelle already have garbage service. And from what I understand from Mr. Dan Hartman is that, and other people in other counties, that garbage services, once you have one provider, it's a good bit less expensive.
I have a few more
Okay.
comments. Donna Mathis, I agree with mandatory pickup, but with a customer choice. Gina Wells, I agree to mandatory garbage pickup. The trash is not going to get any better until we do. The dumping of trash is not going to get any better until we do in the county.
Good evening, Commissioners.
Just tell us your name for the record.
Nikki Millender. I'm a 40-plus year resident of Carrabelle within the city limits, and I'm totally against trash mandatory pickup. It doesn't matter what you do until you do have county-wide service. You're not gonna stop it. The county didn't take recycle bins away just from Carrabelle. It was from the whole county, and I can speak from my experience as working for the county years ago, that you received way, way more trash at Alligator Point, St. George Island, and Carrabelle Beach Park. And until, like I said, the county does possibly go to mandatory, then the problem's still gonna continue. And in all honesty, trash isn't a problem. Trash that you see on the sides of the streets, a lot of is coming from the garbage trucks, the county trucks, and everything else. And then, yes, you do have some people that throws their trash in the back of the truck and it may get blown out, but it's not like someone's driving down the road chunking out their household garbage. If you ride around the streets of Carrabelle, and I do a lot of riding all the time, you don't see trash and people piled up in people's yards. You see junk, but not household trash and everything, because as you said, majority of the people here do have, does have trash already. And then the thing is, these ladies has already got enough work on their hands. I mean, people constantly complain about the city wanting code enforcement. Well, what's it gonna be when you get mandatory trash? How much more work is it gonna throw on them that it's just no need for it? I mean, if the law sees somebody sitting there throwing out trash, write them a ticket. Let me tell you, I can tell you at the times I called, let me correct this before I get everybody upset. This was before Sheriff A.J. Smith, but there's been times I would find people saying, you know how many times though, them people's names that was found in trash wasn't even locals? At Tallahassee, Georgia, places like that. It's not always your hometown folks that's doing stuff. It's people passing through, people in campers that's passing through that spends the night at Carrabelle Beach Park or wherever, and they throw their trash out when they get ready to leave. And I'm just like, my husband was the one who said against, we already got enough government in the world, and these ladies done has enough work on their hands, and I'm just totally against it. If you want to clean up the city, start with cleaning yards, not worrying about people with household trash.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We appreciate that comment. Thank you.
I have two more.
Okay.
I have Martha Murray. Not everyone has the means to haul their own trash. As a way to save some money, making it super easy will. Vance Pedrick, I agree with mandatory trash pickup, just not tied to water bills where people's water gets cut off. Attaching a yearly property tax is a better choice.
And Mr. Hartman, can you address that with the city of Carrabelle cannot attach it to the property tax if we were to do that.
Right. So we've talked about a lot of varieties, but there's numerous ways to pay for mandatory garbage. What we're talking about today, or at least kind of the options we've talked about, would be if we made it mandatory under the ordinance, then citizens would have to contract with a private company to provide that service, or risk being code enforced. So there's that. Then you have, looking into the future, when we go to an exclusive provider, there are multiple ways to bill for that, but what we've always discussed is, let me back up. What some cities do is their RFP, they want the city name, the city trucks to have be the city, I'm gonna say, have the city of Carrabelle on the side of them, trash cans have city Carrabelle on them, that sort of thing. We haven't really gone there, and that's where we would be in charge potentially of billing and figuring out how we were gonna do that through utility bills, special taxing authority, that sort of thing. That's, again, pretty complicated. What we've talked about primarily is that we would grant an exclusive franchise, say 3 years from now, to one provider that can be the most cost effective and provide the best service, and they would drive around in their trucks. I mean, I'm gonna use names here, but Waste Pro, Waste Management, that sort of thing. They would handle the pickup and also handle the billing. So we wouldn't be putting it on anybody's tax bill. That would be, I mean, it's possible, but that is very unusual. I can't imagine doing that. We'd have to coordinate with the county to do that, and everything else, it would be a mess.
Mr. Hartman, how would we know if you make mandatory garbage pickup for people and they can pick their own provider? How would you know that they have garbage pickup? How would that be reported?
Right, so there would be, Keisha would get to drive around, and number one, you would
Look
see.
at trucks?
Look at
Garbage
trash cans,
cans.
right? Garbage cans would have maybe addresses on them, and they'd be lined up in the road on pickup days. And if someone doesn't have one, I mean, this would be the most, call it, detail. I mean, if we had a bunch of code enforcement officers to drive around and everything else, and they would let someone know that we don't see your trash can, or it doesn't appear you have signed up for garbage pickup, and the person obviously could come down to City Hall and say, yep, here it is, I've signed up, here's my contract with a waste hauler, and that's that. But if they can't show that they have, then there would be, the ordinance would lay out the penalties for that.
Thank you, Keisha.
And then I have a question for Mr. Hartman. So you say we could start out and have, several different providers, and then meanwhile, we're giving the 3-year notice or whatever the notice is. Why can't we just continue with the several different providers? Why would we have to proceed and let each resident choose their own provider? Why would we have to proceed on to have a contract with one single provider?
You would not have to, meaning if that model was working best for the citizens Carrabelle, then that we can just continue just as we're doing today. So we don't have mandatory garbage pickup today, but we have competing companies in the city. But like any other, I'm going to call it a utility business, scale is everything, right?
Yes.
So someone who is able to have all the citizens will be able to offer a lower price is usually how it works, but that isn't, I mean, I would let the professionals tell us that, but.
And I think we have a professional here
Yes,
from
ma'am.
Waste One. Tell
My
us your
name
name.
is Paige Richards, and I'm with Waste One, and I just was gonna give you guys some food for thought, I mean, really, he made
Go
some
ahead
really good
and speak
points.
close in.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
One thing, our only option right now, if someone doesn't pay their trash bill, is just I send them out a couple notices, I make a few phone calls, like I give them a lot of opportunities, but then finally we go and we repo the trash can. We even take their service off the route for a couple weeks, just so they miss the trash service. So if it's important to them, they're gonna do it. And a lot of times it's really surprising that it's not. Carrabelle's the place we actually have to repo the most cans. Now we require a deposit. We started doing that about a year ago, and that helped a lot, because if they're not willing to pay the deposit, then we know, they're not gonna pay their bill anyway. But my point was, if they were not paying their bill, and you can't do it through the tax thing, I guess you would have several different companies maybe reporting to Keisha, they have service with me, here they are, this is their service address. But code enforcement, that I guess would be the thing, that you would have to do. That was what I was kind of thinking, there has to be a way, because if we repo their can, they're just gonna, go to the other company and back and forth. That's actually happened before, which is ridiculous, but, that's just, something I was thinking about, there has to be a penalty or a fine or something that's gonna make them have to. Yeah,
Fines
make it
and
enforceable,
penalties.
yes ma'am, that was just, from my perspective, we're not gonna do it for free.
I understand.
And a lot of times, there's a lot of things, like people wanna put out extra cans, and we pay tipping fees at the landfill by the ton. So we've actually had to restrict that, maybe you can put out an extra can once in a while, but some people were just killing us. I think all their relatives were, helping them. And so there's a lot more things, like from our perspective, to consider behind the scenes, like if they're paying for one can, it's one can, and it has to be either everybody's gonna recycle or nobody's gonna recycle. Right now, we pick up recyclables, but it would not be cost effective or efficient for us to dedicate half of our truck for recycling for just a few people. We would have to try to hurry to the landfill and come back and get extra trucks, and, there'd be a lot more involved. So that's just some things throw out there for consideration.
Ms. Page, do you offer service throughout all of Franklin County?
We have not gone to Alligator Point. There's several reasons. One, the roads being bad. It's really far. Everybody there has to have bear-proof cans. We ordered bear-proof cans at the beginning of September. I had a 75-person waiting list. We've not gotten yet. They are promising me, they've backed us up and backed us up and backed us up. They are promising me they are gonna be here by March 1st. So once they do that, the people on that list, we can't take any more people, because that order, and they're 3 times the cost of a normal can. There's only 4 providers, to my knowledge, in the nation, and the one we're going with is the cheapest one.
4 providers of bear-proof
Bear-proof
cans.
cans, yes ma'am. FWC is not any help to us. I even had a clinic at our office grounds to try to pass out the little, accessories you can put up, like 3 or 4 people showed up. So we're doing, the best we can with it. We can't, they're citing COVID is what the delays, but.
Do you all offer any services then in the city of Appalachia?
Yes, ma'am. We don't within the city. We are bidding on that contract within the next few months. We're waiting on the RFP from them. But we have a great percentage outside of the city limits.
And so has the city of Appalachia had mandatory service in the past? And
Yes, ma'am. They have it.
Their contract must be turned out.
Right. They have to give a 6-month notice to Waste Pro. They had the contract since 2007 with a 3-year automatically renewing contract. And when we went to go talk to them, they were in a lot of upheaval right at that time, and they were so excited. They were like, oh yes, and then they found out that their contract had just renewed. Nobody realized it till, I guess it was too late. So we've waited almost 3 years now. So June will be, the time when things are happening. But we're planning on doing that. We're planning on buying new trucks, and probably one of the claw trucks, and we just bought a new facility. We have a place on Patton Drive, but we just bought the old shade tree towing property. We're not quite closed on it yet. There was a couple hiccups in the title work, but as soon as we'll be moving out there, and that's 10 acres out there. So we're planning on moving forward.
Okay, does the commissioners or staff, do you all have questions for Ms. Page, since we have one of the professionals here? It's a good opportunity. And the public, does the public have any questions for Ms. Page? Okay, well, we thank you. Thank you for coming. All right, do we have any other comments? Good, bad, or ugly? Okay, Mr. Mark, please come forward.
My name is Mark Melcher. I'm a resident here at Carrabelle. To be honest with you, code enforcement would be a real big step in cleaning up Carrabelle. A lot of people have garbage service already, but I think if there was a little bit more code enforcement out there, some of these areas that aren't very nice and a lot of household garbage is laying out would be cleaned up. The other question I had was, what was Appalach doing, which was just answered, so those are my thoughts.
Okay, thank you. We appreciate that. I do want to say that over the past years, the garbage dumps that we've had around in the city have really been close to eliminated, and that's, I thank the staff for that, the Courtney and Keisha and the police department on working on that, and they put up their no dumping signs at request of others and myself, and work on that, and they see if folks have dumped right out in front of their homes, or sometimes landlords dump right out in front of a house that's been evicted. And we advertised that for 2 weeks in the paper that we were going to start enforcing no dumping, the no dumping ordinance that we have, and put that on Facebook. And I guess this was maybe 4 years ago, and started enforcing it. And we've really, the right-of-ways are looking great now. And the Streets and Roads crew do a good job of helping to keep the right-of-ways clean of litter. So, but is there any other comment? I think Mr. Bowe may please come forward and just say your name for the record, please, sir.
Oh, yeah.
I'm Bo May. Is there an estimated cost per month or per year going forward that this would want to be?
I'll let Mr. Hartman.
I mean, is a reference to whatever I'm paying now with Waste Pro.
No. No, again, what we're talking about under really what all we've ever talked about is that the private companies will be setting the price, essentially. So for the interim here, to provide the notice and avoid paying this 18 months of money that would be astronomical amounts. So the citizens, if the commission orders mandatory garbage pickup by ordinance, then the citizens will literally have the existing providers to pick from, and it's whatever prices those providers charge. So the providers will be in competition with each other. So there is that, the free market theory that
So not really a number that we could look at going forward where the price may be in
if just what you're saying, so in 3 years, if we would certainly be able to get pricing from everyone in order to develop an RFP if we wanted to put it out for exclusive, and obviously we put some thought into trying to obviously get the lowest price for citizens in the city, and obviously with one provider getting all the citizens, it's going to be lower.
Should be lower, yeah.
Should be lower.
Can I ask her a question about
Yes,
their
please
cost?
do. Please do.
Your cost per quarter or per month,
Hi,
per
yes,
year?
sir. Ours is $75 per quarter. We don't add any fees on. There's no fuel recovery, there's no paper billing, there's no environmental surcharge because none of those are necessary. We also do not increase our rates. They've been the same thing since we've started. The only time they may increase is if fuel gets way out of sight. We might have to do a little fuel surcharge, but it would be minimal per bill. Our Bear Proof cans are $85 a quarter. There is, again, no other fees on there. That's it.
And you do pick up recycling?
Yes, sir. We pick up, oh, yes, ma'am, we pick up recycling for free.
So that'd be like $250.
It's $300 a year.
$250 a year.
$300.
$300 a year,
Yes, sir.
right.
Okay, so and just tell me if I get this wrong, so I can say this so the people on Facebook could hear. Ms. Page with Waste One said their prices right now are $75 per quarter, and there's no additional charges or environmental fees or surcharges or anything. and you have not raised your rates since you started your business, and you would only suspect that you might raise your rates if fuel prices increase significantly. And then your bear-proof cans, if you can get them, are $85 per quarter.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay,
Okay, a little more, yeah.
all right.
So I have Waste Pro, and that's $280, basically $280 a year. I don't have a bear-proof can.
Mhm.
I was just curious what that would, if you could figure out whether it's cost incentive for people who already have garbage to think it's a good thing, pick up, to have it expanded for, just curious.
Okay, I think Commissioner Millender has a comment, I believe.
I have one question for Ms. Richards.
Yes, sir.
Paige, and I'm not trying to
Speak
put
into
you
the
on the
mic.
spot,
Yes, sir.
okay, the other man. If you were, as your business, bidding on service for the citizens of Carrabelle as an exclusive contract, do you see the rates to the customer being much lower than what they are when you have a non-exclusive?
It would be lower, I don't know how much lower, but it's a lot more efficient for us when we're doing every single house,
Right.
so, yes, sir.
There's a follow-up question, but
Yes, sir.
I don't wanna pose it out there right now, because it's in comparison to another city, so I'd rather not.
Yes,
But that answers my question, because
Yes,
I was considering the citizens of Carrabelle. If they can get their collection, because it sounds to me like what I'm hearing is the majority of the citizens of Carrabelle are already paying for garbage collection, whichever company they're with. And, but if there's a way for them to save money and to get an exclusive and lower their cost of garbage collection, it may help encourage others to participate.
right, yes, sir, I agree. And that's what we have talked about, you know, obviously, just like with Apalachicola, they just send us some of their numbers, and we saw that they're slightly lower than ours, so it does make sense, you know, when you're doing every single one, the volume, you know, like you said, that's,
Okay, and I'll ask another question with you in reference to, in a comparison to Apalachicola, since they're a corporate city in Franklin County. And tell me if it's inappropriate for you to answer.
okay.
Will you be billing the customer, or will the city?
They want to bill the customer. For me, I don't know. I think I would like to do it just because then I know for sure. Like, there's so many times we deal with a lot of big companies, and I do kind of everything through email so that I can keep track of, and sometimes I have to go back during the month and edit their bill because this has changed or that has changed. So it's a lot of work for us, but then we know for sure, you know, and for someone else to do it and us just to be like, okay, we accept your number, kind of, I'm not sure. You know?
Okay, fair enough, thank you.
I have one question.
Okay,
Do
certainly.
you require them to pull it out to the street, or do you pick it up?
If it's an older person that maybe has a handicap or something, we go get it.
Okay.
But usually we want everybody to pull it out to the street. If somebody forgets, we'll go once in a while and get it. Some people learn that really quick and try to take advantage, and then we have to say, okay, they'll call, they didn't get it. We're like, did you have it out? But when each and every person calls, we always tell them, have it out by 8 o'clock. It doesn't, you know, I tell them, that may not be when you get picked up, but that means you're not gonna get missed.
I have a couple of questions on Facebook.
Okay,
It says, if the city makes mandatory trash, what keeps the private providers from jacking up the prices? Knowing the city will be fining people that does not have trash pickup.
Mr. Hartman's ready to answer that.
Yep. Is the provider, and this is looking to the future, something we may or may not do, but the provider who gets an exclusive They are bidding, and there's a price schedule within the bid specifications. So literally, well, so we will know what their rates are going to be. And obviously, there may be like fuel surcharges and things that may vary, but we will know the base charges because that's going to be part of the bid. And one other thing, just put it out there, the point of some of these, not the point, but the franchise, when a city gives, especially an exclusive franchise, at times there is a franchise fee associated with that as well. So it's not usually a lot, but it can be $2, $4, something on the bill that is remitted to the city. And again, the concept behind franchises, especially to a private company, is that obviously they get the privilege of exclusively serving the citizens. But yeah, there would be no, the fee schedule would be predetermined at the time of bidding.
And agreed to in a contract.
Agreed to in a contract, yep.
And then if we did not go to an exclusive service, but we continued to allow competitive providers, the rates would stay competitive as they are now. If someone jacked their price up, if one of the providers raised their rates, I would assume if it were me and they raised their rates, I would go to the provider that kept the rates low.
Exactly.
I believe.
Right, they're kind of keeping each other honest now.
Yes.
And then it would be up to us to keep the provider honest, through, obviously, people could come directly to you. I mean, that would be what would happen, is they would be going to their elected officials and saying, you know, I'm not getting the level of service that was promised, and this and that. And there would be provisions in the franchise agreement for us to complain directly to the waste company and get them to provide better service.
All right.
Do we know an actual percentage of homes who have service in Carrabelle? Anything more than anecdotal?
No.
We don't, we've solid waste service, because we've never made it mandatory. My understanding during my tenures here is that we're kind of out of it. We do not, we're not getting any franchise fees from the people operating within the city now, and we are not in any way regulating them. So it's just, you know, we have, I think it's 3 that I've heard of so far. I mean, a 4th could pop up. I mean, it's kind of Wild West right now. Anybody can do it.
I think this question's referring back to the RFP, but how long would that set fee be for? After that set limit, can they raise their rates?
No, so the RFP will have a term of the franchise that we're giving, and it'll have all the rate schedules in it. So it'll be set.
And the term would be, I'm trying to remember, the other provider had given us some suggestions on, like, they seemed like they wanted longer than a 3-year term or something.
I've seen a lot of different ones, but 5 years has been very common, and again, automatically renewing, and I mean, they'll want it. That's part of the negotiation. I say negotiation, but it is, we would put out an RFP and obviously get responses or not. I mean, if our specifications are too tough, then we may not get a whole lot of offers or, you know, people responding to it.
Dan, maybe you should remind people what RFP stands for.
Sorry, request for proposals. So we would come up with, it is pretty detailed, specifications on the types of service. We talked about bear-proof cans. We'd want them to offer bear-proof cans as well as regular cans. We could mandate bear-proof cans. We could do all kinds of things in the specifications, and then the bid applicants would tell us what it's going to, basically we're talking about price and levels of service that they would bid on.
Thank you.
All right, I don't have service. I drop a bag a week in a neighbor's can. Always plenty of room. Some homes have more trash than others. Household size, for instance.
Courtney, do you know how many homes, I know you do, how many homes there are in Carrabelle?
I don't.
That can be obtained from the property appraiser.
Yeah, I'm just,
And a lot of times, that's how they'll do many times, that's how they'll do an audit when you have a franchise and exclusive service, and you have homes that are occupied. then they use the count from the property appraiser's count of the number of occupied residentials. And then I don't think they do it with commercial. And then the provider does what they call an audit. And so the provider does a count, an actual count, about 3 times on how many cans they have out, how many cans they're actually emptying, and then that's compared to the number of households according to the property appraiser's side.
Thank you.
Or report.
I have a few questions.
Okay.
I am still completely against the mandatory service, but if this was something that you all were to do, I keep hearing you speak of resident, what about businesses? I mean, I personally, as a citizen, think if you're gonna make me have trash, so should John Henry's business down the street.
Exactly.
And when I say business, I also include the ice machine in town, because I'm sure these ladies gets tired of probably having ice bags and beer containers and everything else in their garbage can at their real estate. And, you know, that goes back to, there's part of your problem there. You've got a business in Carrabelle, does not have a container, none whatsoever. Well, guess what? I go down there, throw my bag of ice in there, where's my trash go? In the back of my truck. And then it eventually blows out. My second question is, what's gonna happen if you all do decide to pass mandatory trash? How are you gonna handle that? I'm only here 3 years out of the year. How is that right for this one to still have to pay a yearly service, but me not to, because I'm a snowbird, I only live here 3 months out of the year?
And this is something that
Good question.
I mean, because to me, this goes right back to the boat ramp. You had a gentleman come right here, oh, I pay property taxes, I do this, I do that. Well, that don't mean you live here like I do permanently. That pays all kinds of taxes constantly. But yet, y'all passed it and approved that he gets to pay a $3 or however much dollar boat ramp fee it is, just like everybody. If I go to Georgia, oh, I'm not gonna pay $10. It don't matter how much property I own up there. So that's my question to the board to consider.
And that's what makes the specification package when we're developing this so difficult to develop, because research will have to be done on how do other cities and or counties in the state of Florida manage that with the
Well, as a resident of
part-timers.
Carrabelle, I don't feel like it should be how other cities are. This is Carrabelle. We're talking about me as a Carrabelle voter, not Wakulla or Appalachia. I don't think it's personally right that if you live here 3 months and I live here 12, that I'm ordained to have to pay that and the next person. I mean, these are just things that I'm throwing out to you guys as a commission that I haven't heard nobody, and I have watched lots of y'all's meetings and stuff, and hasn't seen people bring these questions to you guys. I
No,
mean,
and they're good questions, and I appreciate it.
It's just food for thought for you
It
all.
is, and you give us a different perspective and good food for thought, as you say, and I do appreciate it.
And I got one more for you.
Okay.
Well, before you go any further, Nikki, I'll say that I had those in my mind now for a while, those questions you just asked. And I've already answered them in my mind. Now, I haven't answered for this board yet, but I've already answered some of those in my mind. So as we go forward, whichever direction we go.
Right.
But thank you.
And that's what I haven't heard those brought up, so I felt like they needed to be said. And then, my other thing is, where y'all talked about making the people, I'm totally against 100%, y'all, if you did go to mandatory trash, to make this be either added on people's tax bills and also especially their water and sewer bills, because let me tell you, I can't speak for all these out here, but these ladies, if they can tell you, my water bill and sewer bill a month, I am never under $100. And there's some months, I mean, even myself, that I work for a living and everything, but sometimes we all hit hard times sometimes, and to sit here and, like they said, possibly look at having my water and sewer cut off, and me with a home of myself, a husband, and 2 kids that's in high school. I mean, and y'all know how Carrabelle is. I mean, Carrabelle's a poor community, and I mean, yeah, we do have folks that lives here that has lots of money, but we've got folks that barely can keep their lights on that lives here too, and you sit and go sticking bills on, and they've got to be paid every month by this date or else. And yes, the board's great and does, or the ladies helps from time to time if they know a person's, and may give them a couple days extension or something if they're allowed, but you can't do that for everybody all the time. And then you're gonna have people that's sitting here with kids with no water, and I'm just totally against that. And then, you know, with people with their tax bills, sometimes they have to wait till their income tax comes in, if they even get an income tax, to pay their taxes. A lot of people, if you look, I mean, every year you see the folks' tax deeds where land's up for sale because people couldn't afford their taxes. I mean, the people already has a hard enough hardship around here. And I'm a working folk, I'm young still and taking care of my family, and I just hate to see others that's not as fortunate as myself to go without because of such and stuff, so.
Well, I can say that we wouldn't have the authority to put any billing onto the tax bills. And this is why, personally, I asked certain questions of Ms. Page to find out how, you know, they would possibly handle billing. And I do appreciate your comments, and I appreciate you reminding all of us that Carrabelle is a poor community. And I try to remind people of that in the public when they insist that the city should buy things or do certain things. And we don't have that large tax revenue that other communities may have. So, you know, I understand what you're saying, what you're talking about there.
In response to the current speaker, we pay a minimum water sewer fee regardless of water use, but that helps keep the system working for all.
Okay, and just in my reviewing other requests for proposals and that sort of thing, the commercial service is a component of the RFP. So when we talk about mandated garbage pickup, it's citywide. So it applies to commercial, residential, everything, and those rates and sizes of we call it dumpsters for commercial outfits or anything, it's all in there. So it's all included. As far as snowbirds and that sort of thing, as far as it being unfair for someone who's only spent 6 months paying the same amount as someone who lives here full time, that's been dealt with in a lot of different ways, and we would obviously have to just feel our way through that. One very common way would be that if you terminated your garbage service because you're not in the home, then you would typically also cut off your water. And not always, because some people have sprinklers, all kinds of things. So we would definitely have to work on that, and it sounded like Commissioner Millender might have some ideas as well, but that was one that I had seen, where you terminate another utility service, and that is your proof that you're not residing at the home, and then obviously you don't have to prove that you have garbage service during the time you're not residing at the home. So that was one way.
I have a question also. I know you're familiar with the infamous yellow chair that was dumped at the recycling site. Occasionally I see an appliance. Occasionally I see other large items on the side of the road. Who currently picks those up now?
Let Ms. Courtney.
If we know who dumped it and we can contact them, we make them pick them up. But there are cases that we don't know who dumped it or who left it there, and then the city's responsible. We pick it up, and we are charged at the landfill for
So
that.
it's picked up by a city truck and it goes to the landfill.
And then that, for instance, I requested that the yellow chair be picked up plus a mattress or sofa, a sofa that was dumped on the back side of the north side of the cemetery. And so our streets and roads fellows picked those items up, and now the city taxpayers will pay the tipping fee for that. But we don't know if that came from in the city residents.
No, I understand.
Or from Liberty County or from county, we don't know where these things.
Walked in and...
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, one follow-up comment from my thought on that. Garbage collection, we're talking mandatory, and we're talking garbage collection, household, primary, business. We're not talking about sofas and chairs and mattresses
Right.
and chest of drawers. If we went to mandatory garbage collection, I don't see it helping the situation with the sofas
I
and
don't
chairs
either,
and
not one
and all
bit.
those kind of things.
Especially the anonymous dumpers.
Yes.
Right, I do not see that helping that type of thing at all. We would still have to have our code enforcement, and
Yes.
the landlords putting the stuff out on the side of the street would still happen, and but our police department does help with that a lot. So, is there any other public comment at this time? Okay, Miss Susan, and just say your name
Okay.
for the record, please.
Susan Usher, and I agree with mandatory garbage pickup because I think it does help a lot. And because we do see a lot of trash in the woods that people dump, showing real estate, that they don't, I don't think they pay for garbage pickup, so they do dump it in the woods. And at Sandy Beach, Patty does require renters to show their garbage service receipts, which has helped a lot, I think, that they do, because I think we were having a lot of renters that weren't paying for it, but now she requires them to show that they are paying for garbage service.
So, I'll ask Miss Patty, then, you manage vacation rentals, so the owners of the rentals, y'all have them provide garbage service?
I've got like 60 vacation rentals, and we also have right at 62, 63 long-term rentals.
Uh-huh.
The long-term rentals, they're responsible for the yard, the trash, the pest control, AC filters. They sign a lease with that. I make them show me proof, just like they gotta come down and change the water over. I make them show me proof they've got this garbage service. That's part of it. I want that within 30 days after they sign their lease. Paige knows me from Sandy Beach Properties. I transferred a lot of our vacation rentals over to Paige when they first got started because they are a great company. Their customer service is out of this world. Not to really call no names, but the other provider, sometimes they didn't pick it up. They say they are, but they don't. I've went over and over and over with the other company. They don't pick it up when they say they're gonna pick it up.
They don't answer their phone.
They don't answer the phone. You can't get in touch with them. I can call over there, Paige answers that phone. If she don't, she's calling me back before the day is over. Like I said, when they go pick up from people's yards, the handicap or whatever, you don't know the people that have called me and thanked me for turning them on to Waste One because they do such a good job.
Well, we don't have the other
Vacation
provider
rentals,
here, so,
right.
okay.
Waste
But we
One
can't,
does the vacation rentals.
Okay,
That we
okay.
have, the majority of them. Now, there are in the contract with the other provider, and they have to get out of that contract. But theirs is like on a quarter, that's all. Didn't we just have to wait for the quarter before we started charging? That's how you and I transferred. Businesses, we got stuck with that 5-year contract. She can't even pick up my dumpster because of that renewable contract that we knew nothing about.
okay.
But yes, that's what we're doing to try to help the
All right,
problem.
so on your vacation rental properties, then they have garbage service as well?
Yes, they do. They have
Okay,
to
well,
have.
thank you.
Right.
Thank you for that information. All right, Ms. Courtney.
Many municipalities include some large bulk days to their routes as an included service.
Now say that again?
Yes.
Put your
Many-
microphone over a little bit.
Many municipalities include some large bulk days to their routes as an included service.
Large bulk days, bulk, B-U-L-K days. So,
Yellow chairs.
Sofas,
Yeah.
mattresses,
yeah, okay, and yellow chairs. Yes, yes, Commissioner, if you just come forward, please.
Just to bring you up to date on a couple of things that the county commission has talked about. Our commission chairman, probably about a month or so ago, just made a general comment, theory only, a thought, was the potential of increasing by a fraction the millage rate to provide the fees for mandatory garbage pickup as one formula. Also, just a, an item of interest, the county is going to have about 5 listening sessions to occur throughout the entire county in the next couple of months relative to code compliance, just to get some feeling, to start taking some notes on what that's all looking like.
Okay, all right, thank you very much.
I know one lady, how she gets her garbage picked up. She makes a plate full of brownies for everybody.
Okay, all right, thank you, sir.
Thanks.
Okay, are there any other comments at this time? Any other comments? Because we want to, you know, wrap up, but we've had some good comments and good discussion. I think everything has been very civil and just good. So, do we have comments from the commissioners at this time? How do we want to move forward? Do we want to move forward?
I don't have really a comment on how we move forward at this point from my perspective. I just wanted to thank those that have participated tonight. A lot of good conversation that echo what you've said already, Mayor. But how we move forward, from my seat, I'm not quite sure. Really. There could be advantages, but there could be, the way I'm listening and what I hear, pros and cons, if you will, both directions. And I'm not convinced at this point if the bang for our buck would be that great if we went to mandatory garbage collection. So again, all I'm trying to do is explain that I'm not sure where I'm at right now. Yeah. As far as the city looking better, we've talked about several things. I see a lot of improvement in the city, as the mayor has expressed tonight, in the code enforcement and how it's being handled by staff now and with the police department and those kind of things. And I've talked to a lot of citizens that primarily are on garbage collection by their own choosing now, and they don't have a problem with mandatory garbage collection, but they're already on it. So I'm not sure at this point really where I would like to go as far as me as sitting in this seat as a voice at this point. I'll leave it to the others.
And I'm sort of in that same vein. And what I've been trying to do is to get all of the observations and facts and feelings and objections and the positives and put them all in one thing and see what that finally brings down to one basic, simple point. And it flashed in my head a few minutes ago. But it's gone now. I lost it.
Gotta write it down, Gal.
That's a senior moment. But that's, you know, proper analysis is what's the real issue here?
Yeah.
And I thought I had it, but like I say, it just maybe it'll come back. But that's all I can say right now. But I agree pretty much with that. I'm not really wholeheartedly in favor of it. I know that down through the years we've been here, we've had people come in from out of town that lived in real ritzy-ditzy places, and they didn't like our little country coastal community. And they want us to make it like their place. They want a McDonald's, they want this, they want that. And I think the beauty of this town, and I get into this almost every day when I'm talking to people down at either the gallery or the museum. I always like to say, where are you from? And the next question is, how did you find us? And that provides a very interesting conversation. But that's I'm just like, I'm just not sure exactly which way to go here. And just more information, more input, and maybe it'll come back.
Ms. Kelly, Commissioner Kelly, Commissioner Mathis, any comments at this time?
I'm sorry I won't be here to vote when this issue comes up.
Okay. right?
Have one other comment
Okay.
on here, and it just says, let the people of Carrabelle make their choice of who they want.
Oh, okay.
Provider.
The provider that they want, okay.
Oh.
Because we do let them make their choice.
That's
of
the
who
way it
they
is
want.
now.
Okay.
Yeah, I think they're referring to the provider.
Okay.
I had a question of Paige, since she's the only representative here. I'm assuming that your service to businesses would include things like dumpsters.
Yes, ma'am. We
Those
have
are available
dumpsters.
through your service.
We expanded, actually about a month ago to, construction dumpsters also, we're doing those also. So we have a number of,
Thank you.
residential, or commercial dumpsters at businesses.
I'm disappointed for the commission's sake that there is so little business representation here, because I would have thought this issue would have been of real concern to them. And,
Oh, you mean the local businesses?
Right.
Mhm. Well, we advertised it.
no, I know that, and Mr. May is here, and Sandy Beach is here, but, there are heavier users that I would have hoped would have been here to be represented or to ask questions.
Mayor, if I can, to try to sum up what I'd suggest, and it's up to the other board here, but I see us not in we're not in an emergency, we're not in a push to make a vast decision on what direction we go in tonight, specifically. I would suggest that we continue to keep it on the burner, continue to look at it, discuss it, gather information, and let's just see where we go. And I'm not suggesting that we have another public workshop in the near future, because of course, the weather could have been a factor tonight. But we didn't have a whole lot of participation, but we got some good information, or I did. And that's just kind of the view that I look at it, that we don't really necessarily just put it to bed, but just continue to mull it over and let's see where we go with it.
And I feel like, but I don't want to have to put it back on the county. I really don't, I don't want to do that, to be,
No.
one of those. But
It's a waste of time.
it would be much easier, or if, just like when we agreed to close the boat ramps during the COVID, everybody closed, we came to a term and we all closed the boat ramps at the same time, the city and the county. And it was easier to enforce, and everyone knew that they couldn't use the boat ramps, period. We wouldn't have, if we had mandatory garbage service and thinking that we're gonna help stop the dumping of household garbages behind the cemetery or at the recycling location in Carrabelle, people will still dump, and we don't know where they're coming from, and they will continue to dump their household garbage. If we had mandatory garbage service throughout the entire county, then personally, I will say I like the idea of a small, minute increase in the millage rate to cover the service. I'm just saying that. But it would be easier to maintain or to manage if everyone had it throughout the county. Over the years, somehow Apalachicola seems that they've been able to manage their service. I don't know if they have a problem with dumping over there or exactly what goes on, and that could be something that one of us could follow up in the next few months and find out what do they do and how does it work, and do they still continue with household dumping from outside the city limits. So, did you have any other comment? Okay.
I had one additional kind of food for thought thing, is there is this notice requirement before displacing private vendors of solid waste services. There is a long fuse on that, and what I know we've discussed just a little bit, but from a lawyer perspective, it does not compel us or require us to do anything, meaning we don't have to go to a single provider, we don't have to put out an RFP, we can just continue on. But sending that letter out with the year's literally notice does give us that option out in the future, whereas when we started talking about this, we kind of hit a roadblock there because I guess what I'm getting at is there's nothing to be lost by sending this, and it's a very technical letter, but a letter out to the existing providers, just to have the option in the future. It does not appear to bind us to anything, nothing. So I would, lawyer-wise, recommend that the commission consider that, just because it doesn't bind us to anything, we don't have to do anything, but it gives us an option 2 years from now, 3 years from now, when, if this issue is, whatever we do on the issue today, but it'll give us that option in the future, as opposed to, if we make that decision 2 years from now, then we're gonna have to wait another 3 years. It'll just get the clock ticking on it, and we may thank ourselves.
Well, that's something to consider. We could, we could take this up, we could put it on the agenda in a couple of months to talk about it. Again, we've got a couple of big items coming up on the next agenda, so maybe in a couple of months we can talk about going ahead and sending a letter out that would give the providers a 3 or 4 year notice, something like that, that would leave the door open to start proceeding on this, and possibly this is something, if the county goes to mandatory garbage as well, then they're going to be looking at a notice like that as well, right? 3 to 4 years out. Is that correct?
Yes, and if everybody would just like to again see it, and then they can ask me questions about it, I can circulate the one letter example that I was able to find from City of Callaway. So everybody could look at it and just see what I'm talking about. It's an innocuous letter, but it gets the clock ticking to give us options.
All right, we'll do that. And yes, Miss Nikki.
Can I ask one more quick question?
Yes, ma'am.
Talking about with the trash companies and stuff, and correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't it used to maybe with the MediaCom or something that they had to have the approval like by the board or something of that sort, like a
City franchise contract.
like a certain amount of money that they could charge the people within the city limits, and
That's what Dan was saying.
and couldn't charge, maybe that's something for the city to possibly, before going the step of mandatory, is to look into something similar to that, to where possibly then you would get quotes from all your trash companies and stuff, and have to do what the Commissioner Kelly was just saying, a franchise or something, to where it would help lower. I mean, $5, I'm gonna tell you, it's $5. This day and time, that's a gallon of milk or a gallon of gas. And I mean, maybe look at something like that to try to help lower the bill, to where more folks that doesn't have the trash service would be look at, hey, I can get this for this amount of money now, I'll get the service. I mean, it's just a little more food for thought that crossed my mind.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Yes, ma'am. Ms. Commissioner
Courtney,
Kelly.
do you have any idea how many people discontinue their water service for a temporary period if they're gone, as was being discussed?
No, I'd have to ask. Crystal would work with that more than me.
I was trying to think what the percentage of snowbirds, might be. I used to be gone, I never turned my water on.
Most of them don't.
Yeah, I left it on, because the fee was high enough
Well, it's,
to turn it back on.
they just prefer to leave it on, and
Well, people with
the fee is
sprinklers.
actually less than the minimum, so, if you're gonna be gone for more than 2 months, but they just prefer to keep it on.
I remember, and I just will share this personal anecdote. I remember when we were discussing many years ago a minimum water charge. And I remember vividly one of the commissioners, not one present at the time, who discussed the amount of time the toilets were flushed. And in some homes, they only flushed them once a day, and in other homes, they flushed them quite regularly. And so everybody shouldn't have to pay, because the little old lady like me, who only, the perception was flushes once a week or something. And I will never forget that discussion. And it struck me as kind of I don't know, I'm like Cal, I've lost the right word. As a civilization, you know, as an issue of civilization, and the minimum water bill was passed, and obviously we do it now. And whether the garbage is minimum, whether I have one bag, whether somebody has an overflowing can, you know, that's another whole issue. How much are we willing to pay for that level of civilization, which is what it is. And I appreciate Cal's point about, yes, I come from an area where people came to the area because they loved the area, and then they wanted eventually to make it like where they came from. And my good example about that is, I live on a lake, and people would come and they loved the lakefront, and it was wonderful. But then they mowed the grass, and then they planted grass, and then they had to fertilize the grass. And so the fertilizer ran down into the lake. And so pretty soon there were no fish at the edge of the lake, and there were no turtles anymore. And pretty soon the weeds were growing in the lake. And they didn't understand that the impact of what they had done changed what they bought and where they came from. And I'm sure Patty's had a similar experience. And so, you know, I'm not saying we're gonna change anything with mandatory garbage pickup. Maybe some people see that as too much government, as too much regulation, as whatever. Other people who have commented, I think, see it as a mark of civilization, if that's what you want to call it. And so I think the commission will be truly between a rock and a hard place.
All right, is there any other comment? Okay, well, we have one more comment here.
Take your mask off.
This is Greg Christopherson. This is anecdotal as well, but I don't know if anybody's ever been to the landfill, but there's gonna be issues coming up in the future because that thing is about full.
It's full.
I mean, I've been to the mountain, I've seen the sunrise from the top of the garbage pile. I mean, so I don't know how long or how much land they own, but last time I went, I almost got stuck going up the hill, it's so tall. So.
And they served at Amnesty Day like around 250 people. I mean, people are bringing their stuff there.
Everything but the yellow chair.
Yes, the yellow chair resides over here at the recycle bin. So, all right, and anything else? And this has been a good conversation. I do appreciate y'all coming out on this rainy day, and it looks like Mr. Bo May wants to say one more thing. No? Okay. All right. Okay. All right, then. Anything else? Commission members, staff members, Facebook? All right, then.
Thank you for allowing us to have the meeting.
Okay, we're going to adjourn. All right, very good.